Yeah, just a quick review of the shoulder surgery pillow. Tons of these things out there. A lot of them have different features if you really get looking at them. This is one that I do really like for several reasons. But first of all, why would you need one of these? Why would anybody want a shoulder surgery pillow? Well, the first obvious answer is because you had shoulder surgery. The idea here is that, they operate on your shoulder. So when it comes time to sleep, you can sleep on your back, but you're not going to sleep on the shoulder that you just had surgery. It's going to hurt too much. So a lot of people end up laying on their side, their opposite side, and that leaves their operating arm kind of hanging down or unsupported. And so when it hangs down, it kind of puts a lot of tension on all the tissues that are irritated, have inflammation in them, that just have been cut on. So it's really uncomfortable. It really makes it hard for people to sleep after having shoulder surgery. So using a pillow like this, what it does is it supports the arm, keeps it in one place so that you can get some good sleep. And it kind of gives your shoulder a chance to heal as well. The other reason you might want to pick one of these is if you're a side sleeper and you want some support for your arm, so you don't necessarily have to have shoulder surgery to get benefit from a pillow like this. So bottom line, if you're looking for any kind of shoulder support, this is what you're looking for, a shoulder pillow. Anyway, what I like about this one is it has a sling on it. Okay, not all of these that I've been looking at have a sling on them. So that's fine when you're sitting. You don't really need the sling, or if you're laying, if you're going to bed, you don't necessarily need the sling. Which brings me to the other point, is that this sling is detachable, so that when you say you're going to use this for sleeping, you just unsnap it, and then you can put the sling on later as you're moving around. So it is fully detachable, so know that it's not fixed. But anyway, so let's say you're sitting down, you're reading a book, you're trying to recover from shoulder surgery, and you're going to stand up and go get a glass of water or something. Well, if you don't have that sling on, there is a chance this could fall down and not stay in place. So that's why I think if you're up during the day, I really like these when they have the sling on them, because it'll just kind of stay in place. Then you won't have to fiddle around, with trying to push that pillow back up under your armpit, which also makes you kind of move your arm out a little bit, which aggravates everything. So basically just put it in place. Sling helps you keep it there. The other thing I do like about this is that it's machine washable. So you can fully wash this thing, which is good. Because if you do use it a lot, you might start sweating. Sometimes post-operatively, you have some drainage, you might get some drainage on it or something. Hey, you won't be able to wash these things, especially if you're going to take this thing out in public. You don't want to have a bunch of blood all over the thing. So anyway, but yeah, if you're looking for something like this, I think this is a good choice. This is one of the better ones I like, and I really like the sling feature. So if you've had like rotator cuff surgery or something, a lot of people are using these after that. Which brings me to another point. If you do need a good source for a rotator cuff, like say you've had torn rotator cuff and you have a lot of questions, or you need a good exercise program, this is a good resource for the rotator cuff, the 6-minute torn rotator cuff. It says for seniors, but I mean anybody can get, even a high-level athlete, honestly, they have an advanced program which can use this thing. Even if you don't have a rotator cuff problem and you're just struggling with shoulder pain, you really you at least need to be strengthening your rotator cuff. And I'll tell you why. The shoulder is a very shallow ball and socket joint, and it depends heavily on the muscles to keep it in place. Now, that's unlike something like your hip joint, which is also a ball and socket joint. But since it has such a deep ball and socket joint, it doesn't rely upon the muscles as much to keep it in place. Shoulder is totally different, very shallow ball and socket joint. You hear of dislocated shoulders, and it's so common because it's just such a shallow joint. Muscles are really the main thing that stabilizes it. I mean, of course, it has ligaments and things like that to hold it together, but it really relies heavily on the muscles. And of all the muscles that keep this thing in place, the rotator cuff, that's its main job, shoulder stability. Now, let's say you have tendonitis, shoulder bursitis, you have shoulder arthritis. If you don't have good stability in your rotator cuff, you're going to get excessive motion in the joint. And that excessive motion, as you bring your arm over your head, or if you start lifting things, picking up things, you're going to get excessive motion. That's going to irritate whatever condition you have. And that's why I say, get a strong rotator cuff, keep that ball firmly in the socket. Things get less irritated, gives them a chance to heal, less aggravation, less pain. But anyway, real briefly, this just kind of goes over the anatomy, what the rotator cuff is. Tons of pictures. If you're a visual learner, you'll really like it. It's not really that boring. I found it kind of interesting. Answers you need to know. Basically, great question and answer. Everything you want to know about the rotator cuff. If you tore your cuff, it'll probably answer. What are the symptoms of a cuff tear? Are there arm maneuvers that might indicate I have a tear? What imaging tests are used to diagnose it? Where is it tear at? Are there different kinds of rotator cuff tears? Here's a great one. I have a tear in my rotator cuff and I'm in a lot of pain. I need surgery, right? Well, no, not necessarily. And I'll tell you why. This is a very evidence-based book and it uses studies to support its answers. Each one of these is a study in layman's terms that you can understand. So here's the deal. So they did these are studies where they look at people that have a rotator cuff tear. Let's say they take 100 people with a rotator cuff tear and they measure how big is the tear. And then they find out how much pain people are in. They run like a pain scale, like a visual analog scale. So then you have 100 people, you know how big their tears are and how much each of them are hurting. Well, come to find out, you would think there'd be a perfect correlation. Hey, the bigger the tear, the more pain they're in. But that's not what they find in these kind of studies. And these studies actually have been replicated over and over using different imaging and stuff. There's actually finding there's a fair amount of people walking around with rotator cuff tears that have no pain. So the asymptomatic rotator cuff tear is a real thing, especially as you get older, like in your 60s and 70s. Incidence of rotator cuff tears really jumps up a lot, but a lot of these are just asymptomatic tears. So let's say you have shoulder pain, you go to the doctor, you end up having an MRI, and it shows, hey, a torn rotator cuff. You're thinking, oh, that's my problem. I have a torn rotator. Well, not really, okay? You could have an asymptomatic rotator cuff tear, and something else is actually causing your pain. So you don't want to go through a rotator cuff repair when really there's something else causing your pain. Anyway, what will happen if I leave my rotator cuff tear alone? Here again, they look at long-term follow-up studies of people that have a rotator cuff tear, and for some reason or another, they just didn't do anything about it. So researchers follow these people over years and to find out what happened to it. You know, did it get better, same, worse? Did it repair itself? Here's probably the most interesting question. How does exercise compare to surgery when it comes to treating a rotator cuff tear? The only way you're really going to know that scientifically is to look at what's called the randomized controlled trials. And that's the highest form of proof in medicine that a treatment is actually effective. So if this is a study where, say, you take 100 people with a torn rotator cuff, 50 you randomly assign to surgery, the other 50 you randomly assign to exercise program. Then you follow them over time. And there's some really good long-term follow-up studies. You know, they follow them, they might do a 6-week follow-up, but then they do like 6 months. Some of these are 6 years. Some of these go on for a while. So let's say 2 years, who did better? The people that had their rotator cuff repair or the people that just did an exercise program? And what they're finding in a lot of these randomized controlled trials is basically there's no difference. You end up at the same place. So anyway, this has an exercise program, stretching and strengthening exercises, 3 different levels, beginning, intermediate, advanced, and really it'll probably even take you less than 5 minutes. Pretty concise program. But hey, if you're just looking for a good shoulder pillow, something to support your arm, whether it be you're a side sleeper or you just had surgery, I think this is definitely worth a good look. So check it out.